Hello, Reanimated. This is episode 123. My name's Stuart. It's the podcast about all things zombie. And joining me is my indelible co host, AJ Conrad. Good day. Hello.
Good day.
Welcome. Welcome back. We continue this week with our season 5 review of The Walking Dead. We are up to episodes 7, 8, and 9. And so we're going to be hitting those up. It's a hard hitting trio. But then after that, we will be. Sorry, before we get there, we got a little bit of news to go over also. So
Yeah.
strap in and let's do this thing. What's up with Don Calfa?
Uh, Don Calfa, fondly known as Ernie the Mortician, from Return of the Living Dead, he has just passed away. And I should also note that another actor who I really truly adored, all over the place, but most recently was in Firefly. Ron Glass also passed away this week.
Oh God, yeah, we should have said that for our last episode because he had died like the day before.
He had. I just was too sad about it.
I know,
And
me too. That
actually,
was terrible.
that was pretty rough. So bad week or bad weeks for those people who were in Barney Miller, I guess. But both of these actors were just fantastic, and I don't feel like either got enough acclaim. Like especially Don Calva. I mean, he was just like a character actor, and you would see him in a ton of stuff. And Ron Glass too, but and Ron Glass as Shepherd Book was just amazing. So anyway, tip of the hat to both of them, and I don't know, it's just really been 2016 has just been a tough year overall. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt.
But, moving on as we must, we have talked a little bit about The Third Wave, which is a zombie film starring Ellen Page. And this is, it's being filmed in Dublin. And, they are at this moment, apparently, or very recently, looking for extras to star in this. And, they had a lot of the kind of like flyer they had up was kind of cool. It was like the extras are needed. The virus has broken out and infected people are on the run. So it was kind of like a cute little advert for that. And I'm, you know, I'm curious to see this. And it has a little bit of a in the flesh feeling because it they have had a cure for some of the infected and they're being shunned by society. So that sounds a little bit familiar to me, but I'll still watch it.
As far as Third Wave goes, I like anything that's going to be starring Ellen Page. At least so far, she hasn't made a misstep in my opinion. So I'm excited to see her for that reason. I don't know much about the premise. What little I've read wasn't super jazzed about it, but I'm totally gonna see it, and I hope that it's good. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I agree. I really like her. When we talked about this before, I think we both had said that it did look an awful lot like the premise for In the Flesh, but nonetheless, it's a film, so that's a little different. And I think that I'm all for any of these projects, and I kind of feel like Ellen Page has been pretty careful about which project she's attaching herself to. So I feel like the script must be pretty good for her to be involved. So
Yeah,
let's see how it goes, but I'm psyched for it and a little bit jealous of those extras that got to be in this. so, so we'll take it from there. And I think you found one more tidbit for us to talk about.
yeah, and this is a little bit. I guess this season of this review for us on Reanimated, I've been talking a lot about season 7, and this is a review from the Guardian that kind of an op-ed, an opinion piece that came out from the Guardian on season 7 about how they're breaking up with The Walking Dead based on this season, which is only notable because I've been saying over and over again how much I'm enjoying this season. Um, After season 6, which I can't wait in a way for us to review that because it's just going to be a garbage fire.
I know. I'm actually dreading it a little bit only because I don't really want to watch it again.
Yeah, I
But,
mean, there's
but
that.
But I will watch it just to tear it apart. I have to agree with you. I feel like season 7, while there are definitely parts of it that I'm not totally excited about, and we've given spoilers away before, I am really, I mean, I did not enjoy all the fake outs about Glendine and then finally killing him off. I'm really not psyched about that. I miss him as a character overall. But I don't feel the same way some of the viewers have been feeling. I definitely don't feel the way about season 7 that I was feeling about season 6. So it's interesting. Maybe people are just tired of it, but it's an interesting article nonetheless in terms of the people who do feel this way. So,
So yeah, they're saying like it's the most thankless 6 episodes of television that they've seen. They also basically say that Negan has nothing on Terminus, which does play into our
yeah,
review of what we're doing right now, because they're cannibals and Negan's just a bully. But I think what they're missing in this is that Negan has an army of hundreds of people, whereas Terminus was just like
didn't. It was just
12,
like,
13, 15 guys. Or
yeah,
that's really the game changer, is that somehow Negan has amassed all of these people, because
who are
Rick and
loyal
his,
to him.
we talked about this before, or maybe we haven't. I don't know if we have, but yeah, in season 6, Rick and his guys kill, I feel like, 40
Yeah,
saviors, and
yeah.
at that point you're just like, there cannot possibly be any more. It's just it
Right.
is nuts. And whatever, we'll get to season 6 and 7 later, and we can talk about if we believe that anybody could amass this many survivors for
And
real.
have them be loyal to them and not cannibalize themselves. Ha ha ha.
Right.
So,
But anyway, so it's interesting to see that the Guardian, or at least this one writer for the Guardian, is saying, "I've had enough. I'm out," and we might be seeing that as more of a trend going forward too.
well, and I mean, we've seen that with the viewership, and the viewership has gone down. I think I would like to wait and see what happens just for, this section and see what happens at the sort of midpoint finale, and we'll go from there. But, um, I'm still enjoying it. And again, I'm definitely, season 6 was for me that point where I was feeling the way that they seem to be feeling in this article, but I haven't really been feeling that this season. I definitely, there's certainly low points, but not to the level. Season 6 felt like a slog. So yeah, let's look forward to reviewing that next, hey. But before we get to our reviews of season 6, I think we now have to talk about episodes 7, 8, and 9 of season 5, Crossed, Coda, and What Happened and What's Going On. And I will admit to you, I was really dreading this section of the season because it's pretty rough to get through.
Yeah, and so these 3 episodes also span the mid-season break.
And
So we,
so the
yeah,
finale and then the premiere.
yeah. So the first two we're going to be talking about are the get us up to November 30th, 2014, which is when they kind of wrapped up the hospital storyline, and then the next one is in February when they started again. So in Crossed,
Mm.
we talked last time about what shit, I don't even remember. Is last time when Carol got run over by the car and Noah
Yep.
shows up at the church, right? So in this episode, we start off with at the church again, with Rick deciding to go to Atlanta, and they're splitting the party and leaving Gabriel, Carl, Judith, and Michonne at the church.
Yeah. And they do the usual things. They're making them safe. They lock up the church.
I'm getting
Um,
deja vu of them leaving
yeah.
Carl and Judith in the church, because I feel like
Yeah.
it's just happened, right?
It just happened. It seems to never be a good idea, and it wasn't a good idea here either. I, yeah. Father Gabriel is a character that just can't seem to stop annoying me.
um, Chris Hardwick on Talking Dead actually had like an interesting insight, not insight really, but just an observation that the Father Gabriel always seems to be about 30 degrees off from the rest of the group, and that even goes into the current season when he's either like really down in the dumps when everybody else is feeling good, or he's feeling good when everybody else is depressed. So at this point in his storyline, he's like he has no idea what's going on. He's depressed. He's trying to find purpose. He's struggling with his whatever loss of faith. So yeah, he's just an annoying. He's an annoying buzzkill character because everybody else is like, "We survived Terminus. We made it. It's gonna be great. Beth might be alive. Awesome."
Yeah.
So yeah, watching him just fumble through this is obviously he like puts people at risk. All three of these, certainly this, yeah, all three of these episodes involve people making decisions that put a lot more people at risk,
Right.
which is just frustrating to watch.
It's frustrating, but especially with his character, where like you feel like he has to come to some sort of an epiphany at some point, and he doesn't. He just focuses on really super weird stuff that I don't. It feels as if I'd agree with Chris Hardwick on this point. It feels like he's like a season or so behind in timing. Like he gets really the things that he gets upset about, like the desecration of the church. Yeah, I get that to a certain extent, but when you're talking about survival, these are the things that you would have to focus on doing. So he's like very upset that they're taking apart the pipe organ and all that stuff, and
Right.
you know, and I don't really, and he really is just like, oh, I can't take care of myself. Like he doesn't want to learn how to take care of himself, but yet he goes out and kind of not even kind of he puts himself at risk, but everybody else around him at risk.
It does lead to some nice irony, though, that he's outside the church trying to
Yeah.
get in. Blah
No,
blah.
it does. But it's also in what I'll tell you, it really bothers me, like how he decides to get out of the church, leaving them all vulnerable there. Just
Right.
for somebody so supposedly, he's supposed to be looking after his flock. He's shown over and over again that he can't, and he continues to not be able to learn that lesson. I just this part I could have just done without. I don't. I'm done with him.
Yeah, it's
So
definitely an annoying story arc.
right.
You say that he's like a season or two behind, and he definitely is. He's like basically at Herschel's farm.
Right.
He's like Herschel at this point, right? Like just like
Right.
a disconnect with reality. But
Right. And I
what's frustrating is we've done that as an audience. We've been through that.
right, and I feel like they're to me the story arc. So they're showing a lot of Father Gabriel's story. They're also showing Abraham and Eugene and Glenn and Maggie's group.
Yeah.
And
You
Abraham, I
mean you
feel
mean Kratom?
yes, Greatham. Um, I feel like they're trying to juxtapose Abraham and Father Gabriel in like they're trying to make you compare those two because Abraham, now that he's found out that Eugene had been lying, is like catatonic and being weird and not like just kind of on his knees, not drinking water, not wanting to
Slapping it
survive.
around.
It's like he's just kind of to me they're showing kind of the same thing. Two people that have woken up from have been although I feel it's a little bit different because I feel like Abraham wasn't deluding himself. He actually believed what Eugene was saying, so it's a little different from Father Gabriel. But did you feel like that's kind of where they were going with this?
Yeah, I didn't even bother reading into why Abraham was being the way he was. I had no patience for it, just like Maggie.
Right. And that's the thing. I just don't have patience for either of these two characters. Yet both of them are showing, at least up until the end, that they don't really have an idea of living. I mean, I feel like Gabriel is almost like trying to put himself into like these dangerous situations and then decides ultimately he wants to live, I guess. I don't know. Or that he needs help from these other people. But they're both people that at this point I'm just like, go away. So.
The Kratom storyline is like the uplifting storyline for this episode. With well, at least the result is because Eugene wakes up and Rosita, Glenn, and Tara have like a fun fishing trip.
And it's a little lighter. They have a little bit of a better time.
Basically, that's any storyline with Tara in it, because she's the one who's cracking the jokes, and yeah, and even Rosita's cracking a smile. So that's kind of like the, hey guys, everything's okay. Don't worry about what's going on back at the church, and also in Atlanta, where Rick and gang have decided to ambush some cops. Rick is. What did you think about all this dynamic where Rick is laying out a plan to go in and murder everybody, and
Yeah,
he gets derailed.
he gets derailed, and it's interesting. Although ultimately, I think his plan probably is the one they should have gone with based upon the behavior of these officers.
What do you think? I mean, there's such a foreshadowing slash parallel to his plan for attacking the hospital and the plan to go into the satellite station, except this plan seemed to have way more intel
Mm-hmm.
than the satellite station attack in season six.
Right. Um, I don't know. I kind of feel like this is the point where I don't know. Like I think that you see the dynamic between Rick and Daryl here, and it's really kind of interesting. And you see it throughout these three. Well, whenever they show this group, you're kind of seeing Rick's change in his attitude. And I feel like the satellite station feels very similar. Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like
Like
they're almost one for one,
right.
and we're definitely seeing a side of Rick in this episode where he seems to be the most bloodthirsty of everybody, where he's like getting ready to. I mean, he well in the next episode too. He also does some stuff that's like pretty out there and almost undermines the peaceful approach that Tyrese has come up with, which is a prisoner exchange. And people like Daryl are having to talk him down from just killing people. It seems like. I mean, he's also spending a lot of time just giving people the eyeball, which doesn't
Yeah. The
necessarily mean he's going to kill them next. I feel like he's wasting time with staring at people instead of shooting.
crazy
That's my
eyeballs.
opinion. Yeah,
Crazy eyeballs. I guess I just with their whole exchange and the I feel like because of the conflicting information that they're getting from the officers that they've imprisoned, there is a lot to be concerned about here.
yeah,
Um,
right there. These cops haven't had time to get their stories straight, and they're not giving the same version of things. But it's like, who can you trust?
right, and I think the answer is you can't trust any of them, and
No.
so you have to treat them not as cops, which I think, of course, that's what they're trying to go for here is play to Rick's weaknesses about being a former law enforcement person, and um, you know,
Lamson's ability, like, who's his call when he's like, the way you say things, the way you hold yourself, were you I'm like, come on,
yeah,
Rick just looks like a a murdering, hillbilly at this point. He doesn't look
right.
like a cop.
No, of course. I don't know that anybody would have come to that conclusion ever at this point.
No.
And and so this is just uh, to me the sort of hand wringing that the group does about this just bothers me a lot. And then you've got the other weird dynamic with Sasha, and then she finds out that the officer's first name is Bob, and I'm just like, oh
God.
God, really? This is a group that has taken their people, and I guess part of what okay, so as I was thinking about their plans to infiltrate this the hospital or whatever it is, I'm thinking about Carol's plan to infiltrate Terminus, and I feel like this group is coming out lacking. Like Carol just is like, okay.
Oh, come on. Carol didn't have a plan. She just rolled up and blew some stuff up.
Well,
I
in
mean, her
some
plan came together in like 10 seconds, right?
Well, that's what I mean. But this plan with all the stuff that they're going on, they have more people, they have weapons, they
Yeah.
have intelligence about what's actually going on in the building. I just feel like all of this felt like such time wasting in the episode,
Yeah.
especially the Sasha storyline, which just drove me nuts. So anyway, that this was just ugh.
Yeah. So when they
Um,
eventually lure some cops out using Noah as bait, which I'm
mhm.
like, okay, Noah, you're a brave chap.
Yep.
Uh, he goes around shooting a gun in the air for no reason until the cops show up, and then the ambush though is just like, okay, they're like arresting Noah, and then Rick and his posse, which is what Tyrese, Sasha, Daryl, and is it just the four of them? Is there
Yeah.
somebody else?
No, it's Tyrese, Sasha, Daryl, and Rick.
Yeah. They just kind of all appear in a clump behind the cops instead of coming from a few different directions,
Yeah.
which is pretty dumb.
Um, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. The other thing that always has bothered me about basically the whole idea, this whole storyline with Noah's escape and all the talk about Noah coming back, and their just focused interest in recapturing him. I just feel, again, like this is just an enormous waste of resources, even in them going to get these prisoners to come and work at the hospital. And
Hmm.
it just feels like such a waste of resources that I don't feel like they have. You send these people out to go and recapture this person. Like, would you do that? Probably not. You're leaving yourself vulnerable, as they obviously did.
Yeah,
And
certainly unwilling people. Like then you've just got a problem in your own house.
right, like it just
They clearly have some. We see in the next episode that some of the people who are there as wards are unwilling to leave, and so
right.
those are the ones like, sure, you like this system, you can stay, but everybody else who doesn't, people who don't want to be there should not. It's not in the cops' best interest to keep them there because then
No.
they have to watch their backs all the time.
Well, and not just that, but they can incite other rebellion within the people already there. So
That's
it
what I mean.
doesn't,
Yeah,
to me, it's like just cut them loose and cut your losses. And it just feels such a thin like plot line that it just drives me nuts the whole time. Like what kind of liquid gold does Noah have that they like, we got to get this one back
yeah,
because our floors don't seem quite as clean without him. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not like I would understand it a lot more if Noah was a doctor or if
sure.
he had
Yeah.
a specific skill set that was very useful to them and they did not want to lose it as part of like that he was some kind of lifesaver or like in the community. If he was, say, somebody that could keep the lights going, like what if he was an engineer or something like that? That's not
Yeah.
what this is. This
He
is
was just
just
the laundry
pure.
guy.
Right, and it's just, that would have been a lot more interesting to me and made more sense to me if they had done that with Noah's character, but they didn't.
Sure,
So
if he'd been
anyway,
like a Dr. Edwards surrogate or something. Yeah.
right. And not just so rant over, but that's just something in this storyline that I just, and I feel like the writers should have known that or thought of that. It just feels very petty and weak, and you don't have the terminus people are just leading people to them. They're not actually going out. I mean, they go out a little bit, but they're cannibals. They're just kind of, playing to their strength, and they know that their strength is their stronghold. Obviously, not that strong given how easily Carol infiltrated it.
Yeah.
But their method of going about things made a lot more sense than what we're seeing here at Grady.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Agreed. There's a scene in this episode where Daryl almost gets killed. Should always note when a major character is
yeah.
inches
This
from
was,
death.
and these were like flayed walkers, which it's interesting. I like the different terminology that everybody has for them. Like all the people in Grady call them rotters.
Yeah.
And these were
Honestly, I don't really dig all these different ways they have to come up with
no,
the word
it's just
zombie.
really silly. And anyway, but these like that I felt like this was one of those moments where when Daryl grabs the rotted head of the walker and just hits the guy with it. Like somebody was just like, this is a great idea for a Daryl fight scene.
I mean, anytime you've got two humans fighting with zombies biting at them, that's fun. That happens a fair amount in the show, and it definitely adds tension. It's not the first time Daryl's even been in that position because he was in the gladiatorial pits at Woodbury where they had a very similar kind of scenario. Yeah, so they make it out of that, although there are a few issues with, first of all, that other cop showing up out of nowhere and nobody hears him driving up. Second,
Right.
when Daryl is looking for that guy, he is being quiet and stealthing around, and that guy just shows up out of nowhere. And there wasn't a whole lot of cover around. It was like a bunch of burned out trailers.
And you'd hear it. You would
You could
totally
hear
hear it.
him. You could see his feet if he was like hiding behind a trailer because they were all off the ground. There were a lot of things that I was like, well, how did he just show up out of nowhere? Well, okay. So by the end of this episode, what happened? Oh, we also have by the end of this episode, Graham shows up back at the church and saves. No, sorry, that's the next episode. By the end of this episode, Gabriel has killed a zombie. Graham has their happy fish ending to their story, and Lamson clocks Sasha and runs away. And
Yeah.
can't think that, I mean, if he had waited until Rick and the other people had left, would have made more sense. But he makes his move while there's still like
Around.
four people there or three other people to chase him down. So
Yeah. But
I
his
guess
subterfuge with Sasha is still pretty stupid. it's like, oh, I had a friend and he's out there. Can you take care of him for me?
Yeah.
Like, she would never turn her back on him, and she wouldn't be getting as close. And like, I just don't buy the whole weird Bob symbiosis thing that they're trying to do here. I just, yes, he's trying to present himself as more of a decent human than these other ones, but I just feel like this group has been through enough betrayal that they're not going to fall for that crap.
Yeah.
However, the scene that happens after this
That's great.
is pretty great. So
So
I'll let you lead with that.
yeah, this episode's called Coda. Um, Also, that last one was directed by Billy Gearhart, written by Seth Hoffman. This one is Ernest Dickerson and Angela Kang, a couple
Yep.
of regulars for the show.
Yep.
Coda.
And this is also the this is the mid-season finale. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when we're talking about this episode and the next, that's what we have to remember, is that this was a mid-season finale, and then the next one is the premiere. So it's a different viewing experience when you're watching these two back to back.
Yeah, definitely. But this one opens with people. You see some shoes running, and at first I thought it was Lamson, but it was actually those are Rick's feet. Lamson's out there trying to cut through his zip ties. There's zombies coming. Rick runs by a zombie and disembowels it as he runs past it.
Yeah, and the weird CG um, imagery that they use here is really strange and fake looking, and I'm like, what was the purpose of that?
Why would Rick even waste the energy to do that? Yeah, it doesn't
It
make any
doesn't
sense.
really. It doesn't. So odd. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
So he's not a guy to waste time on useless stuff like that. But okay, so he jumps in the cop car because Lamson has just started running again. Yells stop a few times on the megaphone and then runs him the hell over. And it's pretty brutal.
Well, what I love is that Rick's like yelling at him through the speaker to stop. Stop running, and then when he hits him, it's like the weirdest, such a strange sequence of events.
Of course, there's nothing to say that Rick couldn't have just cut him off in the car and made him stop in a different way. Instead, he kind of chooses to take him
Hit
off the
him.
board.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's broken his back. There's a little bit of exchange. Like, I didn't know who you were. I wasn't going to trust you. I wasn't going to do anything for you, says Lamson. And then he starts talking about how Rick's been out there too long and he's lost it. And then that's when Rick shoots him with the python, which is a weapon that you're starting to see less and less, because even in season one, Shane made a comment that they had the least ammo for that gun because it's like a different round. It's a harder to find round of ammunition, and I'm pretty sure we don't see that gun anymore
Right. And
after a while.
I kind of feel like the fact that Rick is going to shoot him here is better than him leaving him for this little herd of walkers that's coming up, because Lamson's crippled at this point. He thinks he's
Right.
broken his back. He can't move.
Yeah, that's
So,
a mercy, but he didn't have to run him over, is what I'm saying.
no, he didn't. He didn't. But nah, I think Rick was pretty angry because of the bonding experiences they had of being cops or something like that. So I guess I can
Right.
see that. But
I'm not sure why this episode. I forgot that the Gabriel Church thing is actually spread over two episodes. I don't know why they felt like they had to put that over two episodes, but
yeah, me neither.
so this is the episode where Gabriel goes to the school where the termites had been cooking Bob, and he finds a Bible, and he's like, "Oh, they were Christians," and then he finds a foot, which is Bob's foot, and then he's like, "Oh, they're bad Christians," and then then the glass breaks and the race is on for him to get into the church.
Yeah. And it's just oh, Gabriel. Anyway, like even his little like puzzle mission where he's going and finding these various things. He almost gets taken out by a walker on the way with who has a cross, and he still can't bring himself to kill that walker. Like it's
He
all
he does
just
handle her pretty well though. He like throws her down on a
yeah.
branch. She's like not gonna be able to come after him. He just can't finish her off.
Yeah, but still, there's just all this stuff with this character. It's just like, oh, please stop now. He gets like before that, like as he was escaping, he got the nail in the foot, which was kind of strange.
As
And
soon as he gets out of the church, yeah, that was funny.
but anyway, like I just the whole just the whole sequence of events is really silly. When he comes back and when he's running into the church and all that fun stuff with Michonne and Carl, like it's still, yes, there are a lot of walkers, but it still feels like there's not too many. Like if they're gonna bring them out one by one out of the church, like after they've done their weird little loop de loo under the boards and out of the church, doesn't it feel to you as if Michonne could have handled this handily?
Well, at first, and she starts to.
No, that's what I mean. She takes out enough that I feel like she made this crowd a little bit more manageable, so that
But
if
then
you're,
they start coming in three at a time, and then I think it
yeah,
gets.
no, I mean once they get outside, like why
Oh,
even barrier them off? Because it's like if you would just have them come out piecemeal, you can just dispatch
true.
each
And
one.
yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, if the preacher, if Gabriel had managed to get in through the floor,
They
that would have
could,
been like the best way to do it because
right?
they
You
would
could
have
have
just
just one by
killed
one
them
come in.
one at a
Yeah,
time. Yeah, and then eventually the bodies would have plugged up the hole anyway.
yeah. But anyway, this is the moment where the Kratom comes back and um, you know, the group finds out that Eugene's been lying, and then also Maggie finds out that Beth is still alive. So,
Yeah, Michonne has this huge smile on her face as she tells her that because it's like, and I feel like that's notable because of the next episode
yep,
when Michonne obviously is running out of optimism. Not that she's been an optimistic character, really, but
yeah,
there's a weird random encounter between Dawn and one of the other cops called
mm-hmm,
O'Donnell, where
yeah,
I'm not sure why they have like a Western style standoff. Why he comes to her and says, "You look like shit." The others are talking. I don't.
yep,
I don't understand where that's coming from this guy. Like everything seems to be fine except for they just lost a ward, and that seems to happen
a lot
regularly.
because again,
Yeah,
resources.
going back to your, this clear problem with their whole system. But now
Well,
that
and I
Gorman's dead, I mean, it's also like how many other cops are there who want to get rid of her?
well, and that's I mean, I guess that's the point, and we see a lot of exchanges between Beth and
Dawn.
Dawn about this specific issue where Beth's like, "Oh, this isn't really about. I know how things work. This isn't really about saving me or not saving me. You're just using me, and everybody's using each other for political maneuvering. That I guess you're supposed to see this community as less of a community and more as every man for himself or herself."
Yeah,
And so I feel like maybe O'Donnell was trying to gain some kind of leg up, but if he was in fact part of this group that is questioning Don's leadership, why would he even bother to tell her about it? That's what I agree. Like, it doesn't make sense because
yeah.
why would you even tell her it was coming?
And then they have
Like,
this absurd fight scene where I
yeah,
feel like the sound effects people kind of got given a carte blanche to just make
weird. Yeah,
bone breaking sounds because every time Dawn punches or kicks him, it sounds like he's breaking like a
like
major
glass.
bone in his body.
They
But then they
call him
both,
Mr. Glass. Like, no, it does sound like that. And yet he still comes at her.
yeah, they just have this drawn out fight scene that ends with Beth finishing him off, and I was kind of expecting Dawn to throw her down the elevator shaft
I
after.
actually thought she was too. I really when her hand is kind of there and they're looking down the elevator shaft, I thought Dawn was just going to push her in.
It's a weird episode because Dawn keeps giving Beth in the last two episodes. Dawn, she's giving her a key to the medicine cabinet, although for what reason we're not really sure. She's like, "Thanks for saving me." Like, she seems to be really trying, really hard to recruit Beth to be like a willing participant in their community.
Yeah, and also, Beth is asking her certain questions about her former supervisor, and of course, that Dawn has probably killed him or something happened,
Well,
and
we were told that Edward said she took care of him. I mean, that's
right,
a
but
euphemism, but
we didn't hear it from Dawn, so
yeah.
there's also that question whether this was a true story or not, and and then Dawn during her weird battle with O'Donnell is just spewing the truth or her truth about that situation.
Yeah. So also at this point, O'Donnell is the fourth cop to die since Beth arrives at the hospital, which has to be because there aren't that many of them. This is like
Mm-mm.
half of their, not half, maybe a third
Of their force.
of their force has died in the last few days. It seems like. So I don't know what group could handle it. I mean, certainly Rick's group has never lost three people at once, except for way at the beginning. So yeah, it's kind of insane to think that they're just still functioning.
Well, and a lot of the people that are lost are the people that seem to be the most, um, like, I wouldn't call them, well, yeah, I guess I would. They're the ones that are challenging Dawn, but they're also the ones that seem to be engaging in the worst kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So I definitely there's this weird conversation between one of the many weird conversations between Dawn and Beth, where Beth is like, oh well, now these people aren't problems for you anymore. Well, they're not just problems for Dawn, but they're also problems for the community. So in some ways, you could see Dawn quietly trying to get rid of them when she can't necessarily get rid of them with a full frontal assault,
Hmm.
or with people knowing, basically. So these are ways to address that, but it's not necessarily. It's still a very, very broken community in the way they do things, and yet they still see it in this very strange, idyllic way, as we find at the end of this episode.
Right. So we have the exchange scene. Now the cops have agreed, the cops that Rick has in custody have agreed to spin a story that Lamson was killed by
By
zombies.
walkers.
And I'm like, why would you even believe them that this is gonna go the way they say it is? But okay. So they go to this parking lot rooftop where I guess they're just expecting some cops to drive up, and Rick does his spiel. You From the audience's perspective, we're looking at Daryl and Sasha on the roof of the parking lot behind the parking. There's like two parking
Mm-hmm.
lots, one looking over the other. And this scene is very difficult for me to understand because how do the two cops talking to Rick not see
Right.
Daryl and Sasha? Because
They're right there.
it's clear that they're only 100 feet away and
Right.
it's clearly skylined. And there's one scene where the one cop is looking around like, where did that shot come from? I'm like, yeah, you could probably see both of their heads, but they show us from his view and there's nothing up there. It's very strange. I feel like the show is cheating a little bit because they're like, yeah, no, they're not. You can't see them. I'm like, no, yes, they can. They are clearly skylined above them. And
Right.
then once those cops agree to the exchange, why the hell do they go into the hospital? Why wouldn't they just do it out there?
Yeah, like you would never go into their territory. They know every single inch of that place, and there's so many hidden places where you could sabotage this exchange and overpower this tiny group of like this makes no sense to me, and I really feel like Daryl and Rick would never have agreed to it. Just no way.
Yeah, it doesn't yeah, they've got the ground that they want in this scenario on the
Right.
rooftop. So just have them bring the prisoners to them.
Right.
And that
Um
way, that would have undermined Dawn's ability to do her other stupid thing that she does during
right.
the exchange in the hospital too,
Right.
because they wouldn't. I mean, they might have known uh, tangentially that they have Noah, but they wouldn't have seen him.
Right.
So
So
that's basically where it goes wrong in the hospital.
it goes really wrong. Also, the weird thing with Beth and her Beth doing this seems so weird to me. I mean, she loves Noah, but I don't know that she would have done this.
She's known Noah for a few days, maybe a week. I mean,
Yeah,
how?
I just don't know that she would have done this. So basically, the big finale, the big thing that they do here is that she's hidden scissors in her cast, and as she's doing her best to give like Dawn an evil stare, was like, "Oh, I get how it works now," and like stabs her with the scissors, and then Dawn shoots her in the head, sort of accidentally or reflexively, but nonetheless, Beth is definitely dead. And I don't believe that this would not have ended in a huge bloodbath because of Daryl. Like, I just don't buy that anybody would have paused.
More foreshadowing of Daryl's instinctual desire to lash out at people who have hurt his friends.
Right. So
Am I
he
right?
takes out, yeah, totally. I mean, he takes out Dawn pretty neatly. I just don't think that this would have ended the way it did.
Yeah.
And with
When Beth says I get it now, I certainly do not for
No, me
myself.
neither. No, no, no. Nobody gets it. Nobody gets any of this. And once again, can we just point out why is Noah so freaking valuable?
Yeah, doesn't
Like,
make
why
she's
would Dawn want this guy back in her group? She wouldn't.
the
And
the weird glance. She does kind of like a side eye thing to almost to the people behind her that seems to suggest she's doing this thing where she has to try and look powerful to her people. And so
Maybe.
I guess that's why she's asking for more out of the deal than was agreed to. That's the only possible explanation, but it's also super, super, super stupid. And somebody in her group does try to talk her out of it, and she says, "No, I'm doing this."
Well, but again, what is making Noah go with them? At
No,
this
yeah.
point, they could just all take them down. Like it could just end in a bloodbath. I just don't buy that. I don't think that they would give Noah up, and I just don't. Just seems ridiculous to me. So, and the most ridiculous part of this is after all of this, the Grady group is basically saying, "Hey, you guys could stay here with us. This is
Mhm.
good here." And I'm like, "No, you would never say that. This is terrible here. Nobody thinks that that's true.
And we both just killed one of each other's group. There's no way that we're going to be able to be
No,
neighbors.
we're not going to be friends. This is
Yeah.
done." So that was just ridiculous and surreal and stupid, and I was really annoyed by it. And then the horrible and I think this is a scene that everybody remembers of them walking out of the hospital.
Oh, I thought you were going to say when Daryl starts crying again.
Oh well, he cries a lot, so that's not memorable.
He does. Norman Reedus, and he's commented on this. He gets a lot of grief for his crying face,
He
but
does
I
have a
feel.
silly crying face. But
But
you know
yes,
they
the walking out of the hospital scene is terrible. It's heartbreaking. Uh, Freaking, what's her name? What's the Maggie actor's name?
oh
Cohen, Lauren
yeah
Cohen
yeah
does an amazing job
that's
of
pretty horrible.
making you want to cry and curl up in a ball.
Yep. I mean, no more Tom Waits renditions.
No,
Beth
no, we
was the
still get
only.
we still get some singing, don't we? In the next
We get
episode.
singing, but you know what? It was Beth keeping Tom Waits' memory alive
Yeah.
multiple times
You don't know
during.
that Tom Waits is dead in the zombie apocalypse.
I have a feeling he was a survival. I mean, he's probably hanging out somewhere. But at least in this world, she was the only one keeping his musical memory alive. So that bummed me out. But yeah, no, this is pretty rough. But the whole Daryl carrying Beth's body became like a meme, and Chris Hardwick actually, him and his fiance used that as their save the date or their, I think their engagement announcement photos or something like that. They did a posed photo scene with like that.
Yeah, I saw those actually. That was their
So
invitation.
yeah. So anyway, so clearly it has a little bit of a space in the zeitgeist. But yeah, that's, and you know, we also see Greatham plus church people reunited with the whole group
So we got the
here in
band back
this.
together just
Yep,
in
the
time for
band's
the end of the
back.
season, at the end of the mid-season.
Yep.
And then, of course, they're split up again in the beginning of the next episode because we can't keep this group together.
No, no,
Can't have
clearly
all these
not.
people on one screen. So in my notes, I just have "God damn it" scene at the end of Coda.
Yeah.
There's also a post-credit scene with Morgan, and this is a little strange because like last time we saw him in a post-credit scene, it was right after Terminus.
Yep.
He is following Rick's footsteps. He's also following a trail sign that the termites have been carving into trees.
Yeah.
And now it's been days since we last saw him in a scene, and he's just getting to the school and he's just getting to the church.
Took him a while to get
It's
there.
it's hard to tell if they're like just messing with the chronology or if he
Yeah.
really just like took the longest possible route he could go.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But always like,
He seems crazy, doesn't he?
well, he has since the last time we saw him too. So yeah.
Well, yeah, certainly the last time we saw him when he was hanging out in Rick's hometown, he was
Mm-hmm.
completely bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, and then in the last post-credit scene, all we saw was his face, and like he looks fairly calm and collected. Like, also his gear, he's very geared.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, he does some weird stuff with putting stuff on an altar and then laughing.
Yeah, we
It's
see more action in this. But you know what? Morgan's always been good about getting gear and putting up different things. We
true.
saw that in the town. So
Yeah, he
his
was very
craziness
geared.
his craziness doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to be, tricked out in all the best, you know,
Yeah.
survival gear. So,
Uh,
but yeah, I
so
think I think I think this basically sets up the expectation that the next time he finds the group that he's going to be crazy pants.
yeah. So, but then we go to the next episode, which is the half season premiere. What happened and what's going on? Directed by this is a power couple, Nick Taro
Mm-hmm.
and Gimple.
Yep, and I mean, I have to say the the editing, the way they choose to show this story. They've done this before with The Walking Dead, but I feel like they did a pretty good job at this. The fake out was pretty good. I was definitely taken in when I saw this and then utterly wrecked by this episode.
Yeah, this was a tough one.
Yeah.
In the first time I watched it, I think I appreciated it a little more. This time around, I was more I had less patience for the artsy fartsy stuff.
Yeah, me too. But
And
I think at the first viewing of this, though, because remember, this was coming after the hiatus, and this is your premiere episode, so I was a little bit more tolerant of it. Agreed. Second time round, it feels a little like get to the point.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of all these edits and dream sequences I found pretty tiresome. So
Right.
we've got really quick edits of like digging a hole, people crying, Gabriel at a grave, like reading a thing.
And you're, of course, made to assume, you just assume that it's Beth that all this is
Yeah,
about.
right. And then, but yeah, and Noah is one of the people we see crying, and he has a cut on his head. And so they kind of quickly give you some clues that that wasn't Beth even early on in this episode.
Yeah,
'Cause
like
he
if
cut.
you're looking, you kind of know that it isn't, but
Yeah. So they go to his house. There's a lot of discussion about how they want to take him home, and they're gonna make this long drive, and it'll be worth it.
well, this whole thing is an homage to the comic books, and actually the Rick Chase scene was too. These are both things that are pretty well known in the actual
Wait, whoa,
comics.
whoa! Is this the first town that they go to?
I think so. So this is obviously chronologically this is off, but I
This
think
is
that's
before the farm, even. This is the one that
yeah,
they get to, and the sign is covered
yep.
with snow, and it says do not enter
Don't
dead inside" or something.
yeah. So this is what I think they were going for here.
Interesting. I like it better then. I mean, it does have that, yeah, it's that gated community thing.
Yeah. So, and it has like all those feelings other than the snow part. That whole idea that there's this little community there that they feel might be a safe haven. Um, and it does, it takes a while to get through there. They see some defenses set up, but no people. And there is the really horrible moment where something's off. Like you're not hearing walkers, but you're not hearing anything else. And there's nobody watching. But it seems pretty secure to the group as they approach the gate. And then things are not good.
Yeah, they find out immediately that the place has been,
Gutted,
it's full of,
basically.
it's just all dead. There's a lot of fire damage. It all looks really old though. And as we know, Noah was in the hospital for a year.
Yep.
So, and who knows how long he was on the road getting to Atlanta in the first place. So
Yeah.
this happened a long time ago. There's, there's basically no hope. And everybody's pretty rocked by this. Like Michonne, Rick, Glenn is a little bit like kind of blank. Tyrese is just worried about Noah.
Right.
Tyrese is always just worried about the other people in the group. Like he's worried about his sister, but she's not with them at this point. And Noah is clearly a liability here, and I don't know. I guess when he's just collapses into a puddle, they're just like, oh, he'll stay there and not be a problem. But he's already run off once.
Yeah, like what?
You know, it's like
Um,
why wouldn't you have two people on him or tie him up? I don't know. Just keep him out of trouble. If you're gonna do this sweep for supplies, don't let him wander around and find his dead family. You know, that's never a good idea.
right, and that's coming. I am really troubled by how all this goes down, though. It's really strange and not likely. I don't know how
Yeah,
this.
because Tyrese essentially, when he gets bit, it's by a stealthy ninja zombie kid. No,
Hmm.
one of Noah's brothers who just kind of sneaks up on him because he's staring at photos on the wall. Like, come on, man.
This is all to set up other stuff. I mean, you see the sort of graffiti wolves not
Hmm.
far.
Yeah, and yeah,
Here, you're sort of like putting together the puzzle of what happened to this community, and I just feel like they would all be on their guard a lot more. I don't buy that Tyrese is going to be doing what he's doing. I mean, I know what they're doing to set up so that Noah has to kill his reanimated brother and has to see his mom, and has to see all those people. But this is the thing, is that all these survivors have been through this. I just don't think that they're going to allow Noah to go through this alone, and they're certainly going to be on their guard. I mean, I think they're okay with him having closure, and they would be fine with that and helping him through that, but they're not just going to sort of let their guard down just because they're in this weird gated community, right? And
Yeah.
it just feels like a lot of them do weird, out of character things, specifically Tyrese.
And for Rick and Glenn and Michonne all to be together doing their so-called sweep for stuff
Yeah,
feels really decadent. Like they would be split up.
yeah,
Those are three
totally.
people who don't need to be together.
They don't need
But
backup, and Tyrese always kind of needs a little bit of backup, and I just don't think they would
yes
have.
and no. He also is the guy who runs into
Yeah,
hordes of zombies and comes out unscathed.
yeah.
So it's very it's an ignominious way for him to go out, to be just chomped on by one stealthy zombie, because they're not. I don't know why this show tries to make us think that they're stealthy. Like
They're
Gabriel
not.
gets snuck up on in a in the woods in the last 2 episodes ago. He's like, he hears something, he looks around, he's standing still, he's not making any noise, and then he looks around again, and oh, there's a zombie right in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the show needs jump scares, but don't just manufacture them out of nowhere. Use your canon, and
Right.
you can still make the show scary without breaking your own rules. Is all.
Right.
And
Um,
the zombies that they have in this show are not stealthy. They make noise all the time.
right. And then the weird over the radio stuff that they do here. What did you think about that?
Well, this is the, now we're getting into this psychological territory where Tyrese has also made this point early in this episode that they can come back to and harp on all the time about how he watches the news because that keeps him involved and keeps his eyes open. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
he calls a high cost of living. They really tread this ground. I mean, that's what the radio is for. They have these like weird generic news reports that are all depressing.
Yeah, and I also feel like this is harking back to the whole Rick on the phone with
Yeah.
Lori thing. Like, I felt like this was definitely the same idea. So when it started happening, I'm like, oh, we're going there again.
Here we go down the rabbit
plus,
hole.
plus with hallucinations. Oh, gee, I
Yeah, so
wonder.
we get to see Martin, Bob, Governor, Mika and Lizzie and Beth all show up.
Beth sings a little song.
While Tyrese is going through this, getting bitten a second time and
Mm-hmm.
killing a zombie, and you're like, yeah, go Tyrese, but it's probably all over for you.
Mm-hmm.
Rick and Michonne and Glenn are having this conversation about how, hey, you know what, I would have killed her too, or talking about Dawn,
Yep.
and does it matter? Does anything matter? And all this kind of like, oh, we're so sad. We've been out here too long, and I know that they're doing this so we can get to Alexandria and have that whole like turnaround and have Rick come back from the edge of like complete psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like they got here kind of in a hurry, or
It
are we
does.
supposed to just think that okay, Terminus, then the death of Beth, have like, and then finding that this community is a dead end? This is like put them over the edge a little bit.
Well, I guess so, but I also feel like, okay, so my thought in sort of how they are experiencing different things. So they saw how Terminus worked. That was definitely like, I feel like this is a little bit of a Three Bears story. Like they keep trying to find the best bed to lay in.
Hmm.
And they're not, like, every single encounter that they have show them that basically the rules of their group, while they sometimes have to make really hard decisions, really the only people that they can trust is sort of the group that they currently have. And so I find it just kind of weird that they keep looking for communities that work. Like we saw that the Governor's Way didn't work. We see that Terminus doesn't work. We then see the Grady Hospital where they actually have weapons and they have somewhat of a structure, but they're not necessarily eating each other. But rape happens. That doesn't work. But like I keep feeling like they are running into every single type of community and nothing is really the right fit for them. Nothing is just right. And so I understand Michonne's idea that they should just settle someplace just themselves. But the argument that Rick makes that, oh yeah, this not this place, and it's like, okay, well maybe not this place, but would you really go and seek out a larger population given your experiences thus far? I don't think that they would, but that's not how the show works. So
Yeah.
instead, they decide to go to Alexandria. So, what are your thoughts on it? It just feels like every single group, unless it's like ones and twos or like somebody like Tara or whatever, like they're just not running into people, or Abraham's little group, they're just not running into people that are simpatico with what their ideas are.
Yeah, true. And the show hasn't shown us any other communities that are. The possible exceptions are the governor's second group before he makes them all psychos
Right,
magically. They seem to be decent people before he got there.
right.
And under even though it was Morales was leading them at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe he wasn't a great guy either. But yeah, I agree.
It
It's
just
a
feels very ham-handed and not
well,
logical.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that this group is trying to survive, but you know, every time they come in contact with a larger group, the results are not positive,
So far.
and they lose people.
Yeah.
So I just think that they could have figured out a better way to get them to Alexandria, but I understand why they took the shortcut because they wanted to keep things moving. They probably didn't want people to end up on the farm again, for,
Yeah.
on Herschel's farm again. So they have to keep the action going. Um, but it's something that I was thinking a lot about during this episode.
Yeah, we had a lot of time to think because the flashbacks with Tyrese and him having conversations with dead people and saying, "I watched the news. I'm not done. This isn't over,"
Mm-hmm.
and these kinds of things went on for a long time. It was really funny to me when they're trying to leave after they've cut off his arm, and Rick turns to Noah and is like, "Can you keep him standing up?"
Mm-hmm.
And he gives him Tyrese, who probably weighs 3 times what Noah weighs.
Yeah, Noah is like a string bean compared to Tyrese. It
And
is an odd moment.
they fall right over. It was
But
pretty funny.
during their exit, you're also, I mean, we're seeing more evidence of the wolves, like
Hmm.
the corpses with W carved into their foreheads, and that's pretty much in your face, for those people who knows what's coming.
It's a long honestly it's a long build up because for people who don't know,
True,
we're
it
seeing
takes a
these
while.
W's, and when do we actually meet the wolves? Not for I don't know, maybe later this season we see more of them, but it seems to take a really long time.
It's interesting because it actually reminds me a little bit of they kind of used, not quite like this, but they used this kind of thing in Doctor Who. So there was a whole plot with Bad Wolf, and they would have Bad Wolf and graffiti all over the place, and it took a long time to get to where they were going with it. Even like well over a season, I think. And so it kept making me laugh and thinking Bad Wolf every time I saw the W's. But
So let's keep this in mind too, the fact that they're already hyping up the wolves
right,
at this point, because I think we'll have some more to say about that when the that storyline gets comes to its completion.
right,
So yeah, and Tyrese essentially just dies in the car.
yep,
It
and
seems like certainly from the dialogue and the inner monologue and flashbacks he's having, he's just like, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore, and just dies.
yep. His whole thing, Bob. He wants Bob to turn off the radio, so he's done. And Father Gabriel actually serves a purpose and does a funeral. So there you go. And then the very sad cap moment, which was like, oh man, Rick like leaves his little cap on his grave, which is like, oh God, you guys are killing me here.
Yeah, and
Um,
we can expect that Sasha is gonna lose her stuff completely because
yep,
she just lost Bob. Tyrese has been working on her nonstop with their little asides
yeah,
since that scene, and now he's gone, and so she throws some dirt on the grave and then kind of staggers away, and nobody nobody even tries. I was like, oh, is Rick gonna go and put an arm around her? No, he's just gonna go and shovel some dirt onto Tyrese's face.
yep.
BT Dubs, does Tyrese have a head wound? Do we see that they've do we just assume that they put a knife in his head?
I think we gotta assume it. They probably did the whole ear move that they've been doing in the past, just because, like, that's probably the most humane way to do it. But man, that's a bummer. I really like Tyrese. I was hoping that they would continue having him here, but what can you do? Um, they kill off some really beloved characters, and the fact that you lose Beth in the finale and Tyrese in the premiere, to
Yeah,
me, these are tough losses for this group. So
these are tough. Beth, however, only really got to be valuable based on her hospital storyline, in my opinion, and maybe
No,
her story
I
with Daryl in the woods.
I feel like her story with Daryl in the Woods is a bit of a turning point with her, and yes, the hospital storyline. But to me, that just shows like how they weren't developing her as a character. So, quite honestly, up until the point where they killed her off, I was really hoping that you would after the hospital part, because admittedly, I was assuming she would get out.
Yeah.
I thought that they were going to do more with her character to show how like her newfound autonomy slash independence survival skills were going to
Right.
take effect. So it really made me very sad that they cut that storyline where they did, because all along we've been seeing Beth do these different things, being more of like one of the children, kind of similar to Carl, being very helpless, not really adding much to it. And so I was very excited to see that they were going to have her in this stronger role, almost like a Carol development, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of sad that they decided to end it there. And I know it was deliberate, and I know that's what they always do, but still, would have been
Yeah.
nice to see what happened with her a little bit more.
Well, I think we can certainly draw potential parallels between her and Ophelia in Fear the Walking Dead. Ophelia, who'd been
Yeah.
completely useless and not really much of it. I think she'd killed one zombie the entire show
Mm-hmm.
before she decides to leave the little group that she's with in the hotel and drive off to the border, only to get rolled up by the Minutemen. Uh,
Yep.
she suddenly is badass when she goes off by herself. So
Right.
Beth had a much better treatment in that respect, where she became more badass over time. But yeah, it is a bummer to lose her. Tyrese, I think I was a much bigger fan of Tyrese as I watched the show the first time around, and the second time, kind of his preaching gets pretty old.
Um, I think his preaching gets old. Again, he's one of those characters where, I have these moments where I think that they could have done a lot more for him, in terms of like the ways that they could have developed his character. I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities, very similar to Beth's. And more when I was mourning him, it was really kind of the loss of that potential, as
Hmm.
opposed to what part he played in this, as he did in the show. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so I guess that's kind of where we're gonna leave this trio. After this, we've got 10, 11, and 12, which is going to be starting us down the road of Alexandria.
Yep.
So that's kind of crazy. It kind of almost brings us up to the modern day in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right. So if you have any thoughts, dear listeners, about these three episodes and the episode arc, the mid-season and finale and the premiere, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or a tweet. Reanimatedpcast is our Twitter handle. Or you can leave a comment on the website, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody, and join us again next time for more Walking Dead.
Ciao.
Bye bye.